I was sent to witness humans in combat, and I've never regretted it more. Part 1. The Assignment. Al had lived for 412 years. In that time, he had seen empires rise and fall. He had watched stars die. He had recorded 17 wars, 43 treaties, and more deaths than he could count. Nothing had prepared him for humans. But that came later. First, there was the assignment. The council chamber of the Galactic Concord was a perfect circle, carved from white stone that had been old when the first species learned to walk upright. Al stood in its center, his crystalline body catching the light from 100 different suns that streamed through the ceiling. Around him, the representatives of the elder races watched with their ancient, tired eyes. "You have been chosen," the High Speaker announced. Its voice was like wind through dead leaves. "The humans have agreed to allow an observer during their campaign against the Ash Dominion. You will go, you will watch, you will record." Al bowed his head. His species, though, had served as neutral observers for 10,000 years. They did not fight. They did not take sides. They only watched and remembered so that history would not be lost. "I am honored," he said. He was not honored, he was confused. The humans were children. They had only discovered faster-than-light travel 300 years ago. They had only joined the Concord 50 years ago. They were emotional, violent, short-lived creatures who burned through their brief existence like fire through dry grass. What could they possibly show him that the elder races had not already demonstrated? "The Ash have taken 7, the High Speaker continued. 200,000 Concord civilians are being held hostage. The humans have volunteered to retrieve them." Al felt his crystal structure shift slightly. That was the version of surprise. Volunteered, the tactical assessments suggest. "The tactical assessments suggest it is impossible," the High Speaker agreed. "The humans do not seem to care." 3 days later, Al stood in the docking bay of the human carrier Defiance and wondered if he had made a terrible mistake. The ship was chaos. Everywhere he looked, humans were moving, shouting, laughing. 2 soldiers ran past him, chasing each other for reasons he could not understand. A group in the corner was playing some kind of game with small paper rectangles, slamming them down on a table and yelling. Someone was playing music too loud. Someone else was singing along badly. This was not how warriors prepared for battle. They meditated in silence for days before combat. The Combine ran precise drills, every movement calculated. Even the Ash, brutal as they were, showed discipline. These humans looked like they were at a festival. "You must be the observer." Al turned to find a human woman standing behind him. She was short by human standards, with dark hair pulled back from her face and skin the color of warm earth. There were scars on her hands. Her eyes were the most interesting part, brown, like wood, but with something hard behind them. Something that had seen too much. "I am Al," he said, "and you are." "Sergeant, I'm your babysitter." She looked him up and down. "First time with humans. I have studied your species extensively from the archives." Laughed. It was not a cruel sound, but there was no joy in it either. "Archives, right, that's like studying water to learn about drowning." She gestured for him to follow. "Come on, I'll show you to your quarters." As they walked, Al tried to make sense of what he was seeing. Humans touched each other constantly, hands on shoulders, arms around waists, playful shoves. They made eye contact and smiled. They called out greetings too, who responded with words that his translator flagged as insults but which seemed to please everyone. "Your soldiers seem relaxed," he observed. "They're scared out of their minds," replied. "Every single one of them knows the odds. They know we're probably going to die. This is how we handle it. By pretending everything is fine." Stopped walking. She turned to look at him, and for a moment Al saw behind the mask. He saw exhaustion, he saw grief, he saw fear. Then it was gone, and she was smiling again. "We're not pretending," she said. "We're choosing. We could spend our last hours afraid and miserable, Or we could spend them with our friends, laughing at stupid jokes and losing at cards. Tomorrow, some of these people will be dead. Today, they're alive. We don't waste that." She started walking again. Al followed, his mind struggling to process what she had said. His quarters were small but clean. Showed him how to use the human systems, then paused at the door. "Briefing is in 2 hours," she said. "You should probably know what we're walking into." "I have read the tactical assessments." "Yeah," smile faded. "About that, throw them out." "I do not understand." "The assessments are based on how the elder races fight. They calculate acceptable losses, optimal strategies, when to retreat." She shook her head. "We don't fight like that." "Then how do you fight?" Was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was different, softer, harder, both at once. "There are 200,000 people on that moon," she said. "Mothers, children, old people who just wanted to live out their days in peace. The Ash took them because they could, because nobody was willing to pay the price to stop them." She met his eyes, and Al felt something he had never felt before. Something that made his crystal structure vibrate at a frequency he did not recognize. "We're going to get them out," continued. "All of them, not because it's smart, not because the numbers make sense, because it's right, and because nobody else was willing to do it." "The cost will be terrible," she agreed. "We know we're going anyway." She turned to leave, then stopped. "You were sent to watch us fight," she said. "Try not to throw up, or whatever your species does, it's going to get ugly down there." After she left, Al stood alone in his quarters for a long time. He thought about the tactical assessments. He thought about the laughing soldiers who knew they were going to die. He thought about eyes, old and tired and absolutely certain. He had studied humans from archives. He had thought he understood them. He was beginning to realize he understood nothing at all. 2 hours later, he sat in the briefing room and learned that they had 72 hours to rescue 200,000 civilians from a fortified enemy position. The assessment called it impossible. The humans called it Tuesday. And somewhere deep in his crystal heart, Al began to feel something that his species had not felt in 10,000 years. He began to feel afraid. "I was sent to witness humans in combat, and I've never regretted it more." Part 2: The Descent. The drop pod was a metal coffin. Al was strapped into a seat designed for human bodies, surrounded by 12 soldiers who were about to fall from the sky into enemy fire. His crystalline form did not sweat, but if it could, he would have been soaked. Around him, the humans were not silent. They were screaming. At first, Al thought they were afraid. Then his translator caught up with the words and he realized they were singing. It was a war song, rough and loud and filled with words that would have made the conquered council faint. The soldiers stamped their feet in rhythm, making the whole pod shake. Sergeant sat across from him, checking her weapon for the 3rd time. She caught him staring. "Fear's just fuel," she said over the noise. "We learned that a long time ago. You can let it freeze you or you can let it burn. This seems counterproductive to clear thinking." Grinned. It was not a nice grin. It was the grin of something hunting. "Clear thinking is overrated. Sometimes you need to be a little crazy to do what needs doing." The pod shook as they hit atmosphere. Through the small window, Al could see fire. They were a meteor now, a piece of metal screaming toward a moon that did not want them. The singing got louder. Then the first pod exploded. Al saw it through the window, a flash of light there and gone. 30 humans dead in an instant. The Ash anti-air had found them. He waited for the singing to stop. He waited for the fear to take over. The humans sang louder. Another pod exploded. Then another. The soldiers around Al watched their friends die and they did not stop singing. If anything, they became more fierce, more determined. One woman was crying, tears streaming down her face, but her voice never wavered. "How?" Al whispered. "How can you?" "They died so we could land," a soldier next to him said. His name tag read REYES. He was young, barely more than a child by human standards. "We're not going to waste that." The pod slammed into the ground hard enough to rattle Al's crystal bones. The doors blew open. Before he could process what was happening, the soldiers were already moving, pouring out into a world of fire and smoke. Al followed. 7 was a nightmare. The sky was black with smoke. The ground was torn apart by craters. Everywhere he looked there was fire. The ash had turned this moon into a fortress, and now they were defending it with everything they had. Plasma bolts screamed overhead. Al ducked behind a piece of wreckage, his recording equipment working automatically. He watched as the humans spread out, finding cover, returning fire. They moved like water, flowing around obstacles, supporting each other without words. Private was hit in the leg before they had gone 50 meters. The plasma bolt tore through his armor and burned away muscle and bone. He fell with a scream that Al would remember for the rest of his life. Any other species would have left him. The mission was too important. One wounded soldier could not slow down the entire unit. Instead, 2 soldiers grabbed and dragged him to cover while 3 others laid down suppressing fire. They did not hesitate. They did not calculate. They simply refused to leave him. "We need a medic," someone shouted. A woman appeared from nowhere. Her name tag read CHEN. She was small, with gentle hands that seemed wrong on a battlefield. She took one look at its leg and started working, pulling out tools and medications that Al did not recognize. A shell exploded 10 meters away, did not flinch. "Hold still," she told. "I've got you." "My leg." Still attached, barely but attached. She looked up at him and smiled. It was a real smile, warm and kind. "You're going to be fine, I promise." She was performing surgery in a crater while the world burned around her, and she was smiling. Al recorded everything. He recorded biting down on a piece of leather to keep from screaming. He recorded steady hands, never shaking, never stopping. He recorded the soldiers who formed a wall around them, taking fire so their friend could be saved. The Ash commander broadcast a message across all frequencies. His voice was like grinding metal, full of contempt. "Humans," he said, "you cannot win. Surrender now and we will kill you quickly. Continue and we will make you suffer." Sergeant keyed her communicator. Her response was a single word. Al's translator flagged it as extremely vulgar, something to do with reproduction and the commander's mother. The humans around her laughed, then they charged. Al had seen the elder races fight. The used drone swarms, millions of tiny machines that ate everything in their path. The Combine used mathematics, calculating every shot, every movement, every casualty. They fought with cold precision, treating war like an equation to be solved. The humans fought like fire. They screamed as they ran. They fired from the hip, from cover, while rolling, while bleeding. A soldier took a plasma bolt to the shoulder and kept moving. Another lost 3 fingers and switched hands. They fell and they got back up. They died, and their friends stepped over their bodies and kept going. It was not efficient, it was not precise, it was not logical. It was terrifying. The Ash were good soldiers. They had conquered a dozen worlds. They had never faced anything like this. They had never faced an enemy that would not stop, would not slow down, would not count the cost. Al watched a human private climb over a barricade and tackle a Ash soldier twice his size. They went down in a tangle of limbs, and when they stopped moving, only the human got up. His hands were bloody. His face was bloody. He picked up his weapon and kept moving. By the time the sun set on 7, the first defensive line had fallen. The humans had paid for every meter in blood. Al counted 47 dead in the first hour alone, hundreds wounded. The medics worked without rest, performing miracles in the dirt. Sergeant found him as night fell. She was covered in ash and blood, some of it her own. There was a burn across her cheek that would leave a scar. "Still recording?" she asked. "Yes." "Good." She sat down next to him, her back against a shattered wall. "Someone should remember this." "I have never seen anything like it," Al admitted. "Your people, they don't fight like any species I have studied." "No," agreed, "we don't." "Why?" She was quiet for a long moment. In the distance, Al could hear wounded soldiers crying out. He could hear medics running. He could hear the rumble of Ash artillery preparing for the next assault. "Because we remember," finally said. "Every name, every face, every person we lose, we carry them with us, and we refuse to let them down." She closed her eyes. In seconds she was asleep. Tomorrow she would wake up and do it all again. Tomorrow more of her friends would die. Al sat beside her in the darkness and wondered if he had ever truly understood courage before. He was beginning to think he had not. "I was sent to witness humans in combat, and I've never regretted it more." Part 3: The Long Night. 18 hours into the operation, Al began to understand why the elder races feared humans. It was not because they were strong. The Ash were stronger. It was not because they were smart. They had been solving equations when humans were still living in caves. It was not because they had better weapons or better tactics or better anything. It was because they would not stop. The civilian district was a maze of broken buildings and narrow streets. The Ash had fortified every corner, every rooftop, every doorway. Worse, they had placed hostages in every position. Any other conquered force would have called down orbital strikes, accepting what they called acceptable losses. Destroy the enemy. Rescue the survivors. Move on. The humans refused. Al followed a squad through the ruins, recording everything. They moved slowly, carefully, checking every room before they fired. It made them vulnerable. It got them killed. But whenever they found hostages, they got them out alive. In one building, they found a family, mother, father, 2 children, huddled in a basement. The Combine had refused to send forces to 7. The rescue was not cost-effective. These people had been left to die by their own government. The human soldiers did not hesitate. They cleared a path, assigned guards, and sent the family to the extraction point. The father tried to thank them. He was crying, his 4 arms wrapped around his children. "Why?" he asked. "Why would you die for us? We have done nothing for your people." A young private shrugged. "You needed help, we could help, that's reason enough." Al recorded the moment. He recorded the confusion on his face. He recorded the simple certainty on the humans. The math did not work. The humans were spending lives to save people who were not their own, who had never helped them, who would probably never repay the debt. By any rational calculation, it was foolish. And yet they did it anyway. The squad pushed deeper into the district. Sergeant led the way, her rifle never still. She had not slept in over a day. None of them had, but they kept moving, kept fighting, kept rescuing. At one point, they found a wounded Ash soldier. He was young, barely more than a hatchling by his species standards. He was missing a leg, and he looked up at the humans with terror in his eyes. Any Ash would have killed him. The Ash did not take prisoners. They did not show mercy. They were conquerors, and conquerors did not have the luxury of kindness. Looked at the wounded enemy for a long moment. Then she called for a medic. "What are you doing?" Al asked. "He's a kid," replied. "He's scared and he's hurt, and he probably didn't have a choice in any of this. We're not monsters." The medic patched up the Ash soldier and left him with water and painkillers. As they moved on, Al saw the confusion in the young enemy's eyes. He had been taught that humans were savages. He had been told they showed no mercy. Nobody had told him they might show kindness. The night stretched on. Progress was measured in meters and blood. Every building was a battle. Every street was a gauntlet. The humans fell one by one, but they never stopped. In a brief moment of quiet, Al found himself sitting within a half-destroyed room. Outside, the sounds of battle had faded to a distant rumble. Inside, there was only dust and darkness. "I do not understand," he said. "Your losses are significant. The tactical situation does not support this level of sacrifice. Why do you continue?" Did not answer immediately. She was looking at something in her hand, a small photograph, creased and faded. Two children smiled up at the camera, their faces full of joy. "My nieces," she said. "Maria and Sophia. They're back on Earth waiting for me to come home." "You fight for them." "I fight because of them." She put the photograph away. "When I was their age, there was a war. My home was destroyed. My parents were killed. I would have died too, but a soldier found me in the rubble. She carried me on her back for 3 days to reach safety. She didn't know me. I wasn't her family, her people, her responsibility, but she saved me anyway." She looked at Al, and her eyes were full of something he could not name. "I asked her why," continued. "She said that someone had done the same for her once, and someday she expected me to do it for someone else. That's how we survive, not by counting costs but by paying them forward." A distant explosion shook the building. Dust rained from the ceiling. Stood, checking her weapon. "Those civilians out there," she said. "They're someone's nieces, someone's children, someone's parents. If I don't fight for them, who will?" She left to rejoin her squad. Al sat alone in the darkness, thinking about what she had said. That night 7 humans died in a single assault. Their friends gathered the bodies, wrapped them carefully, and carried them to a cleared area. Even in the middle of a battle, even with enemies all around, they stopped to honor their dead. Al recorded the funeral. He recorded a commander reading names: Private First Class Thomas Wright, Specialist Jennifer, Corporal Johnson. 7 names, 7 lives, 7 stories ended too soon. He recorded the tears that the humans did not try to hide. He recorded the songs they sang, soft and sad in the darkness. And then he recorded them picking up their weapons and going back to war. "How do you do this?" he asked afterward. "How do you keep going?" "Because if we stop," she said, "then they died for nothing, and we don't let our people die for nothing." She walked away, back toward the sound of gunfire, back toward more death, back toward 200,000 people who needed her. Al followed. Near dawn, intelligence came through. The Ash were preparing to execute hostages. The final push had to happen now, ready or not. The humans gathered their forces. They were battered and bleeding. They had been fighting without rest for almost 20 hours. By any reasonable assessment, they should have retreated. They should have called for reinforcements. They should have admitted defeat. Instead, they prepared to attack. Al watched them check their weapons, adjust their armor, say quiet goodbyes to friends they might never see again. There was fear in their eyes. There was exhaustion. There was grief. But there was also something else, something that burned like a star. Saw him watching and walked over. "You don't have to come," she said. "This is probably a one-way trip. I was sent to observe. You were sent to survive and report." Al thought about it. He thought about his duty, his mission, his species' 10,000-year tradition of neutrality. He thought about the archives back home, waiting for his records. Then he thought about Private, who had kept fighting with a destroyed leg. He thought about Doctor, performing surgery in a crater. He thought about who carried a photograph of 2 little girls and fought for strangers. "I will come," he said. Studied him for a long moment. Then she smiled, a real smile, warm and tired and somehow kind. "Stick close," she said, "and whatever happens, keep recording. Someone should remember what we did here." The sun rose over 7, red and angry. The humans formed up, a ragged line of wounded warriors facing an impossible task. And Al realized he was no longer an observer. He was a witness. "I was sent to witness humans in combat, and I've never regretted it more." Part 4, The Breaking Point. The final assault began with a scream. Not a battle cry, not a war song, Just a scream, raw and primal and full of everything the humans had been holding back. 2 days of death, 2 days of watching friends fall, 2 days of impossible fighting against impossible odds. They had nothing left but rage. And that was enough. Al had seen the elder races in their fury. They became cold, their calculations faster and more precise. They became silent, their coordination perfect. The Ash became wild, throwing themselves at enemies without thought. The humans became something else entirely. They became focused. Every movement had purpose. Every shot found its mark. They were not mindless, they were the opposite. They were completely, terrifyingly present. All of their fear, their grief, their love, their hate, they took it all and forged it into a weapon. Al's translator had a word for it, berserker. It was not accurate. Berserkers lost control. These humans had more control than he had ever seen. They had simply stopped holding back. The Ash compound was a fortress, walls 3 meters thick, guard towers every 50 meters, thousands of enemy soldiers waiting inside. The tactical assessment had called it impenetrable. The humans did not seem to have read the assessment. Sergeant led the first wave. She moved like water, like fire, like something that could not be stopped. Al watched her kill 3 Ash soldiers in as many seconds, her movements smooth and precise. Behind her, her squad poured through the breach she had made. A plasma bolt caught Corporal James right in the chest. It burned through his armor, through his skin, through everything that made him alive. Any other species would have fallen, would have died. Wright kept fighting. For 90 seconds, he was a dead man walking. He cleared a corridor, breached a door, and saved 12 hostages before his body finally realized it should stop working. His last words were, "Get them out." Then he fell, and he did not get up again. Al recorded it all. He recorded Private, both arms broken, using her head to knock a Ash soldier unconscious. He recorded a medic named Tors performing field surgery while enemy fire burned the air around him. He recorded a sergeant named carrying 2 wounded soldiers on his back, one under each arm, running through a crossfire that should have killed him 10 times over. He recorded humans crying as they killed, having what they had to do but refusing to stop, fighting through tears, through pain, through exhaustion that would have broken any other species. And he recorded the moment everything changed. The Ash commander was cornered. His forces were broken. His fortress was falling. He had one option left, a dead man switch, wired to explosives throughout the compound. If he was going to die, he would take as many humans with him as he could. He activated the switch. A section of the compound collapsed. The sound was like the end of the world, metal screaming, stone breaking, everything falling into chaos. 40 humans were buried in the rubble. Al waited for the survivors to continue the mission. That was what the elder races would do. Acceptable losses, press forward, complete the objective. Instead, every human in range stopped fighting and started digging. The Ash did not understand. They tried to regroup, to take advantage of the distraction. But the humans who were not digging formed a wall around those who were, fighting with renewed fury to buy their comrades time. Al found on her knees, tearing at the rubble with her bare hands. Her fingers were bleeding. Her nails were torn. She did not stop. "The mission," Al said, "the hostages." "I know." Her voice was steady, but her hands shook. "We'll get them, but we're not leaving anyone behind." "The tactical situation." "I don't care about the tactical situation." For the first time, Al heard her voice crack. "Those are my people under there, my friends, my family. We don't leave family." All around them, humans were doing the same. Officers and privates, wounded and whole, all of them digging side by side. The battlefield had become a rescue operation. The war had become something else entirely. Al did not understand. He had observed 17 wars. He had seen species sacrifice individuals for the greater good without hesitation. He had seen commanders leave wounded soldiers to die because the mission was more important. He had never seen anything like this. They pulled out 32 survivors, broken bones, crushed limbs, blood everywhere, but alive. 32 humans who should have been left for dead, pulled from the rubble by hands that refused to give up. They also pulled out 8 bodies, 8 humans who had not survived the collapse, 8 more names to add to the list. The survivors wept over their fallen friends. They did not hide their grief. They did not apologize for it. They held the hands of the dead and made promises that Al's translator struggled to express, promises about memory, about honor, about never forgetting. Then they picked up their weapons and finished the mission. The Ash commander died 30 minutes later, still holding his dead man's switch, unable to understand how he had lost. His forces surrendered shortly after. They had never faced an enemy like this. They had never met a species that valued life so highly that it would risk everything to save it. By the time the sun set on 7, it was over. 193,000 hostages were saved. Not all of them, 7,000 had died before the humans arrived, killed by the ash or by the fighting. But the rest were alive. They were free. The cost was terrible. 423 humans dead, over 1,000 wounded. The 47th Expeditionary Force had lost almost a third of its strength. Al watched them carry their dead to the extraction point. They moved slowly, carefully, treating the bodies with the same care they would give the living. Some of the bodies were barely recognizable. Some were in pieces. It did not matter. Every single one was recovered. "We don't leave anyone behind," had said. She had meant it. As the last transport lifted off, Al found standing alone, looking at the ruins of the compound. Her arm was in a sling. She had been wounded in the final push, a piece of shrapnel that had nearly taken her hand. She did not seem to notice. "You won," Al said. "Yeah," her voice was empty. "We won. You saved almost 200,000 people. We lost 423. She turned to look at him and her eyes were full of ghosts. "I know every single name. I will remember them until I die." "Is that a burden?" Considered the question. For a long moment she did not answer. "No," she finally said. "It's an honor. They trusted me to lead them. They trusted me to bring them home. And when I couldn't," she swallowed hard, "remembering them is the least I can do." She walked toward the transport, leaving Al alone with his thoughts. He had come to witness humans in combat. He had expected tactics and strategies and the cold mathematics of war. Instead, he had witnessed something that his species had forgotten existed. He had witnessed love. Not the soft, gentle love of peacetime, but a harder kind. A love that fought and bled and died. A love that refused to leave anyone behind, even when the numbers said it was foolish. A love that carried the names of the dead like precious treasures. He had witnessed humanity. And he knew with absolute certainty that he would never be the same. "I was sent to witness humans in combat, and I've never regretted it more." Part 5, The Testimony. 3 months had passed since 7. Al stood in the center of the Galactic Concord Council chamber, exactly where he had stood when he received his assignment. The same white stone, the same light from 100 suns, the same ancient, tired eyes watching him from all sides. But everything had changed. He had submitted his report, 3,000 pages of observations, recordings, and analysis. The council had reviewed it. They had watched his footage. They had seen the humans fight and die and refuse to give up. Now they wanted his testimony. "Observer," the high speaker began. Its voice was still like wind through dead leaves, but there was something new in it, something uncertain. "Your report has been most unusual." "I recorded what I saw," Al replied. "Indeed." The high speaker paused. "The council requires your assessment. In your professional opinion, are humans a threat to galactic stability?" Al had known this question was coming. He had thought about his answer for 3 months. He had considered every word, every implication, every possible consequence. Yes, he said, they are the greatest threat this Concord has ever known. The chamber erupted. Representatives from 100 species shouted and argued and demanded explanations. The called for order. The delegation threatened to walk out. The Ash ambassador, there was one now, since the surrender, simply watched with cold eyes. Al waited for silence. It took a long time. Explain yourself, the High Speaker demanded. The humans are a threat, Al said, but not in the way you assume. They will not conquer us. They will not destroy us. They will do something far worse. He paused, letting his words sink in. They will show us what we have forgotten how to be. The chamber was silent now. Even the Ash ambassador looked confused. I observed the elder races for 400 years, Al continued. I watched the reduce war to mathematics. I watched the calculate acceptable losses. I watched the Ash abandon their wounded because they slowed down the advance. And I watched ourselves, the stand apart from it all, recording without acting, observing without caring. He pulled up his recordings. The first image appeared on the chamber's display. A human medic named Sarah, performing surgery in a crater while shells exploded around her. This woman saved 37 lives during the campaign, Al said. She did not ask their species. She did not calculate their value. She simply refused to let them die. Another image. Corporal James Wright, the man who kept fighting for 90 seconds after taking a fatal wound. This man died saving 12 hostages. He knew he was dead. He kept moving anyway, not because he wanted to live, but because others would die if he stopped. Another image. Humans digging through rubble with their bare hands while enemies attacked from all sides. These soldiers stopped their assault, stopped their mission to rescue their buried comrades. By any tactical assessment, it was foolish. It cost them time and casualties they could not afford. They did it anyway because they refused to leave anyone behind. Al turned to face the council directly. The humans fight differently than we do. They do not calculate acceptable losses. They do not weigh lives against objectives. They treat every single person, friend or enemy, human or alien, as someone worth saving. This is weakness, the Ash ambassador growled. Sentiment, it makes them vulnerable. It made them victorious, Al replied. Your forces were superior in every measurable way. Better weapons, better positions, more soldiers, and you lost. You lost because you did not understand what you were fighting. He brought up one final image. The human funeral, soldiers gathered in the darkness, singing for their dead. I watched them mourn, he said quietly. I watched them weep for friends they had lost, and then I watched them pick up their weapons and go back to war, not because they had stopped grieving, but because they refused to let their grief stop them. The High Speaker leaned forward. You said you regret your assignment. Explain. Al had been waiting for this question too. I regret it more than anything in my 400 years of life, he said, because now I have seen what a species can be when it refuses to abandon its heart. I have seen courage that defies logic. I have seen compassion in the middle of battle. I have seen soldiers cry over enemies they were forced to kill. His crystal structure began to vibrate, the equivalent of emotion breaking through. And now I must return to my people who have spent 10,000 years watching from the sidelines. I must tell them that everything we believe about civilization, about progress, about moving beyond primitive emotions is wrong. The humans have not evolved past their feelings. They have learned to weaponize them, and they are stronger for it. He looked around the chamber, at the ancient, tired faces of the elder races. That is what I regret. Not the assignment, not the danger. I regret that I have seen what we have lost, and I do not know if we can ever get it back. The chamber was silent for a long time. Finally, the High Speaker spoke. Your testimony is noted. The council will consider your report." It was a dismissal. Al bowed and turned to leave. He was halfway to the door when he saw her. Sargent stood in the visitors' gallery, dressed in civilian clothes. Her left arm was gone, replaced by a prosthetic that gleamed silver in the light. 3 months ago, she had been a soldier covered in blood and ash. Now she looked almost peaceful. Almost. Her eyes still held that ancient weight, the weight of everyone she had lost. Al made his way to her. "I did not expect to see you here." "Heard you were giving a speech." She smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. "Calling us dangerous." "You are the most dangerous thing I have ever encountered." She laughed. It was a real laugh, warm and tired and somehow unbroken despite everything. "Buy you a drink?" she asked. "I know a place, terrible beer but good company." Al considered. His species did not drink. His species did not socialize with former subjects. His species did not feel whatever this feeling was, this warmth in his crystal heart, this sense of belonging. "Yes," he said, "I believe I would." They walked together through the corridors of the conquered station. Around them, members of 100 species went about their business, ancient, tired, efficient. None of them looked at each other. None of them smiled. Noticed him watching. "What are you thinking?" "I am thinking that the elder races have forgotten something important." "What's that?" Al looked at her, this human who had fought and bled and lost so much, who carried the names of the dead in her heart, who could still laugh after everything she had seen. "Connection," he said. "Joy, the ability to find light in darkness and meaning in suffering, the courage to care about others even when it hurts." Was quiet for a moment. Then she reached out with her remaining hand and touched his arm. It was a simple gesture, a human gesture. "You know," she said, "for a crystal alien who spent his whole life watching from the sidelines, you're pretty wise." "I had good teachers." They found her bar. The beer was indeed terrible. The company was indeed good. And as they sat together, a crystalline observer and a soldier, two beings from opposite ends of the galaxy, Al realized that this was perhaps the most human thing of all. Not the fighting, not the fury, not even the courage. It was this, the ability to reach across the void, to connect with strangers, to build something beautiful out of shared pain. The refusal to be alone even in a universe that seemed designed for loneliness. He had been sent to witness humans in combat. What he had witnessed instead was humanity itself. And sitting in that bar, drinking terrible beer with a one-armed soldier who had taught him more about life than 400 years of observation, Al realized something that his species had forgotten 10,000 years ago. Some things could not be observed from a distance. Some things had to be lived. He raised his glass, a gesture he had learned from watching humans, and Met's eyes. "To the fallen," he said. "To the fallen," she replied, "and to those who remember them." They drank. Outside, the stars burned cold and distant. But inside, surrounded by strangers who had somehow become friends, there was warmth. And that, Al thought, was enough. That was everything.